Welcome to episode 118 of the Business Development Podcast. And on today's expert guest interview, we are chatting with Dave Pavelich, founder of Conxeppt, a high-end sustainable fashion brand based right here in Alberta, Canada. He was also the vice president of Maxim Fighting Championships, the regional marketing manager for Gateway Casinos, and has had a very prestigious marketing career. Stick with us. You're not going to want to miss this episode.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Welcome to episode 118 of the Business Development Podcast. And on today's expert guest interview, we have a super exciting guest, one with an incredibly varied career, an impressive career, and I look forward to chatting about him today. Today, we're talking with Dave Pavelich. He stands as a beacon of innovation and strategic brilliance in the realm of brand development and creative direction. With a career spanning from the adrenaline-charged world of professional sports to the intricate landscape of luxury branding, Dave has consistently pushed boundaries and redefined industry standards. Beginning his journey as the vice president of the Maxim Fighting Championship, he orchestrated captivating live events and brokered game-changing broadcasting deals, setting the stage for his subsequent success. Transitioning seamlessly into roles such as regional marketing manager at Gateway Casinos and Entertainment and vice president of sales and marketing at Voran Group Ventures, Dave's entrepreneurial spirit and keen eye for marketing trends have consistently driven growth and profitability. Now, as the founder and creative director of Conxeppt Ventures, Dave continues to sculpt brands into masterpieces, offering a perfect blend of style, substance, and strategic brilliance in an ever-evolving landscape. Dave Pavelich remains at the forefront, shaping legacies and inspiring progress with each endeavor. Dave, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Kelly, what a brilliant intro. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to chat with you and your listeners.
We talked about this multiple times at this point, but you've had one of the most impressive marketing careers that we have seen grace our stage just yet. Yeah, it's very impressive. And, like I said before, congratulations on an amazing career.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate that. It's, marketing is one of those worlds that's ever changing. So if you're not changing, you're stagnant and you're staying still and you're going to get lost in the shuffle. So it's always exciting to keep growing, stay on trends, and you just gotta, be on and have conversations with people like you to keep you younger and keep you fresh, right? So that's the name of the game, is to keep growing and to never stop learning, because that's what happens to a lot of people in a lot of different careers, is they kind of get into the position and they get complacent and they think they know it all and they don't listen to the next generation. And then they get lost in the shuffle. Yeah. So you gotta keep that youthful energy around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that career has just progressed, into the founding of an absolutely amazing fashion company. And we're definitely going to get into that later today. But, take us back to the beginning. You've had an incredibly impressive marketing career. Like I said, probably one of the most impressive that I've seen on this show yet. And I would love to hear your journey. How did you end up the Dave Pavelich you are today?
I would have to attribute a lot of that to the way I was raised and the way I grew up. My father, Mark Pavelich, his father, Matt Pavelich, is the first ever NHL referee in the Hockey Hall of Fame. His brother, Marty Pavelich, won 4 Stanley Cups with the Detroit Red Wings. He's actually the last remaining Detroit Red Wing from that season that's still alive today. He's 94, 95 years old, still skis in Big Sky, Montana. So what was instilled in me from a very young age was hard work. Those were the times where hard work beat everything else. It was about saving your money. It was about hard work. It was about showing up and doing more than everybody else around you, and just, showing up and putting in as much effort as you can. And I have to attribute a lot of that to my father, Mark Pavelich, who started the Maximum Fighting Championship. He actually legalized the sport in Canada.
Wow.
So from a very young age, I was 11 years old, and my father, even at 5, 6, 7, he never treated me like a child. He always treated me like an adult. So at 11, I felt like I was 16, 17 years old, because the conversations we had was about, hard work, saving money, investing properly, building your own business, be your own boss. That's what was, those were the conversations we had at dinner time. And so he always brought me to these meetings. So when we were growing up, I would go to the corporate partnership meetings, right? And he always gave me a lot of a leeway to actually build those deals myself. Of course, he would look at them, but I was always at the table from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
So 11, 12, 13 years old, I was out flyering cars. I was doing all the guerrilla tactics of marketing that people would probably be doing in their 20s.
Yeah.
I started doing that at 11. I was knocking on doors, flyering cars, going B2B, talking about the shows, the fights in the areas, really strategic FSA targeting, but doing it on our own and showing up. So that I kind of started from a really young age. At that point, 13 years old, I got my first job, because I was like, I don't want to just work for you, Dad. I want to go in and out. So I was a busboy at a restaurant while I was learning the business. The only job I could actually get hired for, because at the time it was 14, I was getting paid under the table.
Yeah.
And from there, I worked there for a few years, of course, handled the marketing side, marketing promotions. It was when I was 13, 14 with my dad, coming up with different ideas on how to structure and how to get eyeballs with a very little budget, right? Learning that at a young age. And then actually when I was in high school, I worked while I was doing that, I worked in a clothing store. So I started off as a sales rep at a clothing store. And because of my business background, where, it was just entrepreneurial spirit in my family household, I just had a knack for business. So at 16, I was the manager of that clothing store, and it was called Paradox at the time. It's still around. It's called Opulence now.
Yeah.
And it's across the way with Zoll. And Zoll was a mentor of mine when I was really young, 14, 15. And he just instilled in me how to buy the right clothes, how to pay attention to trends and things like that. So I started managing that store. And of course, when I was 18 years old, it might have been 17 or 18, my dad offered me the position of vice president, and a lot of people will say it's nepotism, of course, but I feel that my dad never really treated me like a normal human. Like, I had to put in more work than anybody else around me. He wouldn't have given me that job. A lot of times working with family is a lot harder than working with the strangers, because they expect so much more and probably give you a little bit less.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that and became the vice president. And our goal, we were competing on the grand stage. We were the third biggest organization in the world at the time. So you had the UFC, and then you had Pride Fighting in Japan. And, we kind of amalgamated both of their unique differences and put it into one. So we actually, our fights were in a ring.
Yeah.
And my job was to bring in as many eyeballs across the platform, because I helped sign a deal with Mark Cuban, which HDNet, which turned into Access TV. So we were live broadcast across the world, and we had international fighters from everywhere. And my job was to get eyeballs from all of these different markets, but our budget was very small. So that's where I learned how to take a small budget and make such a big impact out of these campaigns. And still to this day, when I went into corporate marketing in the casino business, a lot of other marketers would spend money like it's the business's money. But for me, I spent money like it was my own money.
Yeah.
So I was very, very strategic with how I spent every single dollar. And, when you're dealing with these executive teams and you're saving money and bringing more people through the door, your career progresses further pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like, that's absolutely amazing. And first off, I just wanted to acknowledge, I totally get what you're saying with regards to like family businesses. And you know what? I agree with you completely. I don't think that any business owner puts somebody in a position without thinking that through about 18 times. Right. And so if your dad chose you, even if you were 18, and I was also young when I got into my career, but if he chose you, it was because you were the right person for the job, regardless of being his son or not.
Exactly. No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, and then when I was 18, we started doing shows in Ontario as well. So we had to move myself out there. I went to school out there in finance and marketing, and then from there worked in the casino business as we sold the. My dad was getting tired of the business and sold off the business and became into the casino marketing world. And the reason why I picked that career is because I would go to Vegas so much as a kid because it's the fight capital of the world. So growing up in the fight business, we had over 186 fighters come from the MFC to the UFC back and forth. We actually managed fighters. So I was there all the time. And the casino business just, it had everything I was interested in. A casino in Vegas had high fashion. You'd had all the big stores in there, had all the best restaurants and best chefs. You've had all the best entertainers in the world. It was a 24-hour gambling city. Casinos may be a little bit different in Canada to Vegas, but it still held all of the aspects that I enjoyed, from hospitality to fashion, just the way corporate executives dressed in the casino business. It was just, it just fit my personality, and I started doing that, and it was very, very fun until COVID hit, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell me, what happened when COVID hit?
I've been working in casinos for about 6 years, and then COVID hit. All casinos were closed. I kind of waited for a quarter, and we were still closed after 3 months. And then one of my mentors, Terry Bandera, who, I attribute a lot of my career to as well. I learned a lot from him. He started off, actually, he's a serial entrepreneur, but he actually automated the first drilling rig. So we call it a smart rig. And so in the oil industry, and he has multiple businesses. And at that point, he was moving from that business to help out as the COO of Voran Group Ventures. And this was a cleaner and disinfectant that we manufactured in Canada that was used in the aviation space, but it's a residual killer, a residual killer product. So what it would do is it would actually leave a microscopic layer on the surface and would actively kill pathogens.
Wow.
And I thought, hey, it's COVID. You've got this product. I'm going to jump into it. Let's go. And their whole thing was they were launching nationally. And my background with launching nationally recognized brands, it was a perfect fit for me. So I did everything from, logo to the brand, to launching the brand, to coming up with the marketing campaigns on how we're going to attract eyeballs in the decision makers. So all very strategic ideas and campaigns into that business. And he thought I was the right fit for it. And I took the bull by the horns, where, preparation meets timing. And I took that position, and it was great for my career. It was a lot of fun. And then, while I was still in the casino, all the way back to bring it the full circle, I started Conxeppt there at the casino. Okay. So it was a side business. It was a passion project at the time. And then I grew the business so much in those 5 years that it was no longer feasible for me to be in an office anymore to work on other people's dreams. Not that I didn't love it. I loved it, but it was just time for me to go out. I spoke to my wife. We had a serious conversation because, a salary is very tough to leave.
Yes.
To let go of, especially, I always say, a salary is the drug they give you to forget your dreams.
Yeah.
So you kind of fall into that cycle. But I was fortunate enough to have that my wife has a great position as well. So we were at the point where, we don't have kids yet. So it was time for us to branch out and go on our own. And then from there, I've been building those businesses for the last year and a half on my own.
Wow. Man, that's unreal. And like it's a big jump, and I was having a hard time understanding it when we first met, but it actually makes so much more sense now. Your passion for fashion started when you were just a kid.
Yes, absolutely.
And it makes so much sense why. And even if you look at the progression of your career, every single position that you spent in your career, you were dressed nicely.
Yeah, I would say that. I probably get that I was dressed nicely, and I got bullied for it in school, to be honest. Like, I'd go shopping with my mom. My mom is a very stylish person. She's French Canadian. When if you go to Montreal, everybody's got dressed up. I would say it's the fashion capital of Canada. Everybody looks good. They go out, you go to the grocery store, people are dressed up. It's a little bit different than it is here in Alberta. So I had that fashion sense from my mom, and we would go shopping, for junior high clothes, and I would be buying turtlenecks and slacks, and people at school would be like, where are you going? And making fun of me and things like that. And I still dress like that to this day. So
yeah. No, man, it makes so much sense. Okay, you launched your business. Tell me a little bit about what it was like to launch Conxeppt. When you took that jump, tell me a little bit about what that moment was like, because you're absolutely right. Walking away from a salary and probably a pretty damn good salary is not not an easy choice for anyone. And we have a lot of listeners, I'm sure, who are in that in-between space right now. And what would you say to them? What was it that motivated you to take your life in your own hands and say, you know what? I can do this. I'm gonna go for it.
It's an unpopular opinion that I have, because a lot of people will tell you the opposite. A lot of business people will tell you the opposite that I'm about to say. But for me and my family, it felt the most comfortable to do. But a lot of people would say, if you want to start a business, you got to jump in 100% and you've got to go full, which I agree with to an extent. However, you got to pay your bills. You got to be realistic, right? So I launched Conxeppt. I was still at the casino. It was a passion project. I started very small. I took appointments after work. I continued, I worked 7 days a week, 6 days a week, really built that business. And I didn't leave any salary position until I was making more money with Conxeppt than those salaries, which is an unpopular opinion. A lot of people will tell you you can't get to that point unless you quit and go full tilt with the new business. However, especially if you have kids, you've got responsibilities, you're going to have to sacrifice more so your time and your leisure. And for me, all I did was work out, eat, work, and that's just kind of the cycle I put myself in. But it didn't feel like work, because again, it was a passion project, right? That it really motivated me, kept me disciplined. I had fun doing it. I had a great time meeting people while doing it. I grew my network doing it. So to me, it didn't really feel like work. Of course it is work. I mean, the bigger you get, the harder it is, where from an administrative standpoint, you've got invoicing to do, there's a lot more to the business. But at first, growing it, I just had such a blast doing it that it didn't feel like work. And I was fortunate enough to have a wife that didn't demand, I always am very structured with my time. So I would always, book time off for my health and book time off for one-on-one time with my wife. And I think that that's really important to do while you're growing that business, is to ensure that, at least once a week you're having uninterrupted dinner and really catching up with your significant other, because, as an entrepreneur, every second of the day can be used to work towards your goals, right? So it's about balancing your life to the point where you're still planting seeds and watering those relationships, and not forgetting that, life is also a social construct, and it's about the relationships you have with one another, whether it be with your clients or your friends or your significant other.
Yeah, you touched on something that I totally get you, right? Like, starting the business development podcast and Capital for me was the same thing. It's like I could devote 100% of my time to that and it not feel at all like I'm stealing from anything. But then you start to recognize you are stealing a little bit from everything. And yeah, tell me a little bit about some of the techniques that you've used in order to essentially prioritize, your social relationships. Because I know, for me, that's been a struggle. And for most entrepreneurs that I've met, that's been a struggle. What are some of the techniques that you used in order to balance your life a little better?
I read I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but I read I forget if he was a professor at Harvard and he had a business. I don't remember who the person was, but I read one time that, every single Tuesday at 4 o'clock, no matter what it was, his whole team knew that he couldn't be bothered at that time. He would stay late Monday. If there was any issues, you would know that Tuesday he wouldn't be available and Wednesday he would be. But on those days, he would have uninterrupted time. And he didn't let anything. It could be a 911 issue, but that at that time he spent time with his wife. And when I read that, it really hit home for me. So it's all about, time management and ensuring that there's that one special day a week that you put aside, that no matter what, I'm not going to take any calls. I'm not going to take any emails. I'm going to spend this time with you. So I've used that concept into my own life of just controlling my calendar, right? Just control the controllables. And then at that specific time, don't let anything bother you, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
You've got to turn it off, because no matter what, a text will come in, an email will come in, it'll distract you. And you'll never, you those relationships with that person will be damaged from that, right? Because people feel like they're not important to you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, like, for us at our house, what ended up happening was me and Shelby ended up working together a lot more. And I think that there's a lot of people who think, well, someone in the household can own a business and it just be theirs. But in my experience, that's absolutely impossible. Like, I rely so much on Shelby and her feedback and her input into what I do at Capital and what I do on this podcast that I don't think it's possible to separate your business and your family. Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't been able to see how that's done yet.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm in interesting business. Well, I'm in businesses that my wife is also interested in, right? So fashion business, she's designed and helped design some jackets for our women's custom clothing line as well, right? So she's involved. We talk about business all the time. She works for the government of Alberta. However, she also has her own successful blog online of fashion and fashion blog online. So, there's a lot of mutual interests.
Mm-hmm.
We're best friends. Like, everything that we do, we kind of do together anyway, whether it be, all the things that we're interested in, from fashion to culinary experiences to travel. It's more of a person that we spend all day, every day together, other than the fact that she's at work where I'll be growing the business, but she's still involved on the business side as well. So I agree with you. Absolutely. And I grew up in a household that was like that. My mom was the accountant in the household, and my mom was out driving when we went flyering cars or knocking on doors at businesses. She would be in the car and I'd be the one going in. So she'd be driving me. Right. So yeah. I've always had that connection within my family where everybody kind of does their part and helps out, because it takes a community and a village to grow a business.
Yes.
It's not just one man show.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. And yeah, like, so much of the things that you discuss, I'm sure, are business related. It's just the way that it goes. Most of the conversations in our house, for better, for worse, end up stemming back to business in one way or another. But you know what? It's also glue that holds you together on the same thing. If you're both passionate about it, like, it sounds like your wife is very much in the fashion industry. If she's working fashion blog, she understands, she gets it. It's probably something that you guys share a passion in then.
Well, 100% she does. Yeah, we definitely share that passion. A lot of times, she'll tell me if if the quality's missing, right? She helps out with quality control, right? The picking the details and the buttons on ready to wear garments and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a team effort.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say, right? Behind every strong man is an even stronger woman. they,
I would have to agree with that one.
yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Me too. You know, okay, I know that I would get some flack if I didn't ask you. Tell me about some of the absolute amazing things that happened to you while you were doing the fighting championships.
Oh, there's so many. So, while we were doing the fights, I mean, we started before George St. Pierre really started getting big, right?
Yeah.
So I got to see George St. Pierre's career, from 1-0, 2-0, 3-0,
Wow.
4-0. We flew to Montreal to watch him. We had him come to Edmonton for seminars and helped us grow our brand here. So, just seeing George St. Pierre's career from the absolute start to the finish, and for what he did for Canadian MMA and combat sports in general, was just a great thing to be involved in. I was 13 years old. Jason McDonald was the first fighter ever from Alberta to be in the UFC, and he fought the likes of Rich Franklin, which was the UFC middleweight champion at the time. He grew up on the ranks. So 13, 14 years old, I remember being a cornerman. So I would hold the spit bucket in the UFC. So just being backstage at the UFC, holding that bucket, being in the corner, just seeing the adrenaline, seeing the intensity that the show and the sport produces just from ringside was an incredible journey from a very young age. Having dinner with Anderson Silva, and him being such a respectful person, and just soaking in that martial arts wisdom is another highlight. I would say signing the deal with Mark Cuban, right? We actually,
Wow.
Part of our contract with that was that he had to come to Edmonton and he had to sign the contract in person. So, sitting next to Mark Cuban while signing that contract, having a great dinner, and we had all these, it was at River Creek Casino at Sage at the time, and we had this private room, and we had all these expensive wines for him because he's a billionaire. We just want to make sure, he walks in with a t-shirt and jeans, looks like a good old Alberta boy, and he's like, "Hey, can I get a Corona?" Super laid back guy, awesome guy, and he would go through his cell phone. He's like, "Hey, do you want Jay-Z's phone number, or how about Oprah Winfrey?" So he was flexing on me with this contacts, and he's just a pretty down to earth, special guy to be around. So that was definitely a highlight. I mean, I've met so many people.
Yeah.
Gene Simmons came to the shows. The late great Ralph Klein was he was always in the front row of our shows in the fight business. He always supported the sport, helped us, get the legalized. Bill Smith was the mayor at the time, but just being around those kind of people at a young age was great. He actually, my sister sang the national anthem when she was like 7 or 8 at our shows. She was an incredible singer, and seeing Ralph Klein, shed a tear during the O Canada, at the fights was great. Just seeing the amount of fighters whose dreams came true, coming up the ranks. Benson Henderson, who was a former UFC champ and went on to be a Bellator fighter as well, and he actually grew his career in the MFC. So seeing somebody start again from scratch in our organization and to grow to be world champion is pretty incredible stuff. That's just off the top of my head.
I was gonna say, off the top of your head, that if you're going deeper would just be wow. Like, it's just unreal, dude. It's unreal. Your life experience, man. Like, how do you think that being in the room with such great, amazing people shaped you? Like, I can't imagine as a kid, and not even just as a kid. Like, I get that you were in like 18, 20, and some of the probably even a little older in some of these scenarios, but you're standing next to giants. What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's humbling. It's humbling to see. You know, a lot of times what I think happens when you meet celebrities for the first time is like you kind of go crazy and you don't know how to handle yourself. So it kind of teaches you to, you know, relax, that they're just normal people. At the end of the day, they're just normal people. They want to have conversations. They want to connect. Um, and you know, it's just to sit and listen to the wisdom is an incredible experience, right? So it's best basically I would sum it up to it's a humbling experience. You know, it allows you to have calm nerves and you know to not be stressed under kind of pressure situation or what would seem to be a pressure situation, and just to ask questions
Hmm.
because everybody likes to answer questions no matter what. Ask questions, you know, don't be scared. Next time you if you do run into a celebrity, ask them a question. They'll probably be more inclined to have a conversation than for you to just say, "Hey, you know, take a picture with me,"
Hmm.
or this or that, you know,
Yeah,
like be more involved in the life, and they're humans just like you.
that's
So
right.
imagine you walking down the street and somebody's just like grabbing you and, "Hey, take a picture with me,"
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's just that's what it taught me.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head too. And it's like, you put it that way where it's like, would you like that? The answer is like, of course not, right?
Exactly.
We're all people and we appreciate being treated as such. So, okay. One of the things that you touched on, and you've had an absolutely amazing career in marketing. We have a lot of people listening in marketing, maybe just getting started. And one of the things that you had talked about, which really shaped your career, was working with a small budget but making a big impact. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how you did that?
Absolutely. So there's a few scenarios. So I'll use it in three different scenarios. The first one being with the MFC. So with the MFC, with the small budget, is we had to do a lot of out of the box thinking, right? So how do we tell the story of these fights, right? So what we did is what I was good at is creating storylines, and I've always been a wrestling fan. You know, watching the WWE growing up,
Sure.
not it's almost like a soap opera for men. It was a lot of the storylines that I liked and things like that. So I would actually find for the undercard, because our main card was full of, you know, world class international fighters, but for the undercard I would try and tell stories with the fight cards because that's what sells. It was stories that sell. So you know, at one time I had a brother versus brother matchup where they just didn't like each other for a while,
Yeah.
and then they trained at separate gyms, and then they came in and had a fight. So you know, radio stations, PR, they picked that up because it brings in eyeballs, it brings in listeners, it's an interesting story. So that earned media that we receive from those kind of matchups. Or I had one time I had it, uh, bar doorman at a bar, and he wanted to fight another doorman or a bar manager from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I never just allowed these guys to come off the street and fight, though. You got to remember that is like these guys. I still, you know, they had to go to a martial arts gym, they had to train, they had to become an athlete. Actually, one of them was a former athlete, hockey player at the time. So just kind of matchups like that, or we'd bring in Adam Braywood, which was a CFL star. He fought for us one time. So bringing in that CFL, and we were doing like what similarly to what, you know, Jake Paul and this crossover boxing is doing now. We were doing that back then. We had
Yeah.
CFL players coming in. We tried to get George LaRock to come fight for us, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. Things that would earn us media. And then once we became a little bit more international, another thing is I would take, so we'd have fighters, let's say from Atlanta, or we'd have fighters from the Midwest. Well, I would advertise in their communities
Hmm.
because, again, it's all about connecting to the viewer. So I wouldn't spend my marketing budget in New York if we didn't have somebody from New York fighting there,
I see.
right? So I would make sure that I'm picking those exact places to start, because Facebook was just becoming a thing at that time. I think 2006, 2007 is when really Facebook ads started coming out. So we would strategically buy ads in the communities we were ahead of the game because nobody was even buying Facebook ads at the time. But because I was younger, and I grew up where social media just launched. I took advantage of that. So we grew our social media following pretty early. We were on YouTube really early. We were on Facebook, doing ads in our areas in SEO, or excuse me, FSA targeting in those areas pretty early. So that's the example I would use from the fights, is really telling stories. From the casino side, I had, every time somebody hears of a corporate company, whether it be like, third party videographers or cinematographers or branding experts, when they see a corporate company, the price always goes up because they're not, that corporate company is not spending their own money. However, when I started, I had built relationships with videographers. So, and I've had bulk purchases with them before, right? So I actually leveraged my relationships, which a lot of people in that position probably couldn't have done.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of lucky on building those relationships in my other careers, that I was able to get a significant discount on content creation just from my relationships.
Sure.
So I would use and leverage those relationships to have a significantly more impact, create a lot more content for a lot less money. So, and that's why people hired me, is I had the network, the ability, the skills, and the branding eye, which you can't teach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I would say that for the casino. And then for Voran Group, another one that we did. So we were a new company. We were launching throughout Canada, and we were B2B, right? We weren't doing direct to consumer. We were B2B. We were looking for wholesalers, cities, like actually like the people who purchase for the city,
Yes.
things like that. So what I created, and because my wife is a blogger, she would get all these PR packages from L'Oreal, other beauty brands, Armani. So I would see all these really cool PR packages that they would send over. So I had the idea of, okay, why don't we build a PR package? Not completely expensive, but let's build a very cool one. Not just here's your disinfectant, but
Mm-hmm.
let's have a personalized leather. Let's have our wipes, our disinfectant, a little gift in there for them. And we would send these for free to our decision makers in these companies. So the CEO of Staples Canada,
Yeah.
the director at Bunzel, or the city of Edmonton. So we would drop these off, find all the contacts in those specific roles, and then we would send off these PR boxes, which cost us probably about $25 to $30 a pop. So on the grand scheme of things, it was quite cheap to get those eyeballs of those decision makers. I would also go on LinkedIn beforehand, make sure I added them, like some of their posts, so when my name came up, they would recognize it.
Yes. My gosh. Yeah, it's all about the story, isn't it? When you really think about it, marketing is about creating a great story, because that's what people love.
Absolutely. It's all about storytelling. It really, really is. Never what there's been if you go, and I always say, it's not always about your product, right? If you go on Red Bull's Instagram account, you barely will see a can of Red Bull. It's all about lifestyle. It's about skiing. It's about ATVing. It's about pedal biking down the mountains, about extreme sports. It's about doing what the wild thing, right? And that's the Red Bull brand, right? I think it was a old, again, Harvard professor, but I can't quote the person's name, but he said, don't sell the drill, sell the hole, right? So how you make that hole, and the experience of making that hole, like it's going to be a lot easier, right? Things like that. So it's not about the product all the time. It's the story on how you position that product and sell that product.
Yes. You talked about, essentially, you talked about Facebook, but obviously we're going back a number of years now. For organizations that are looking to get the most bang for their buck on their digital ad spend, on their marketing spend, what are the things that you would recommend to them today?
Are we talking about B2C or B2B?
You know what? I think primarily we're talking about B2B, but if you wanted to spend some time on both, that would be amazing.
Okay, for B2B, I've been saying this for about a year now, that LinkedIn is where Facebook was about 15, 20 years ago. A lot of people that are no longer on Facebook are actually on LinkedIn, and it seems more like a business community. However, it's still great for both B2B and B2C, in my opinion. A lot of everybody that's buying typically has a job, right?
Yes.
And most people, if you're looking for a job, you're on LinkedIn, and if you're growing your career, you're on LinkedIn. So it's about creating LinkedIn content, but really going further than just posting a video or posting a an ad. Is, I would say, dive into the programs that LinkedIn provides, right? Answer the questions, because there's questions that pop up on LinkedIn now. Create a conversation around those. It's about connecting with your fellow business experts, and become an expert and have conversations. Show why you're the expert
Yeah.
in that field and talk about it. And at first it's going to feel like you're producing a lot of content for free, but the seed you plant today will grow tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about those small actions that you're taking today on the LinkedIn space.
Do you think that advertising spending on LinkedIn is a worthwhile budget or a worthwhile use of money?
I think there's a bunch of different variety, which is nice on LinkedIn, because you can have, automated messages go out, which creates a conversation. You got to really be the second message should not be automated.
Yes.
In my opinion, a lot of people have like 3 or 4 automations. I think one automation, if there's a reply, you must get in there yourself to talk to them and create that human relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets the ball rolling. So there's those kinds of aspects to LinkedIn that I find really beneficial to start conversations. But I do think that spending money on LinkedIn is well worth it right now as well.
Awesome. What's your take on AI? Obviously, you've been through it from the very beginning. What do you think is going to be the impact of AI on marketing and advertising moving forward?
I think it's going to replace a lot of jobs, especially in the copywriting field, in the content writing. However, I do think you have to humanize all of these texts. I think, a lot of the what it spits back out at you is getting redundant.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely needs that human aspect to edit. I think it's going to make teams smaller, but it's going to make teams more robust and able to do more work. I feel like it's going to be more of an assistant than the actual job itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And I think I love what you said about putting yourself back into it, because I don't know about you. I'm sure you and me both get the same amount of crap messages on LinkedIn, right? But so many of them are automatically, you just know this is written by AI. There's no human in this whatsoever, and there's zero chance that I'm responding to it.
Exactly. I would even, go further to make sure that the first automatic message it's sent out automatically, but whoever wrote it should be human.
It has feeling. It has personal, like you can feel it, as opposed to like, I'm reading this.
Yeah. Marketing is all about emotionally connecting with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no emotion, there's no sale, in my opinion.
I love that. And I agree completely. And it's the same thing with business development, right? It's about creating a person-to-person relationship. And you do that by being human. Dave, bring me into Conxeppt. Thank you so much. I think you've given so many amazing insights to our listeners regarding marketing. You've had an absolutely amazing marketing career. Now I want to get into your entrepreneurial career. We're moving into Conxeppt. You followed your passion. You started a high fashion company. Bring us into Conxeppt. What is it?
Conxeppt launched in 2018. And, when I first launched Conxeppt, it was a fully custom suits brand. And the reason why is, and I'll be completely honest with your audience, is one, I wore suits to work every single day. So it was something that I wore. It was part of the person I became, right? I worked in finance for a while. I wore suits every day. I became this person that enjoyed wearing suits. I enjoyed mixing and matching my shirts and ties. And, when I moved back to Alberta, because I went to school in Ontario, when I moved back to Alberta, I would be wearing these suits, and I'd go, pump gas or something, and somebody would be like, "Oh, are you going to a wedding?" Because people didn't really dress up here in the outskirts, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like, I was a young business person, right? So sometimes as a young business person, it's hard to get taken seriously.
Yes.
Especially if you're wearing a t-shirt and jeans. especially if you're trying to build a career in a new industry. So to me, the suit was almost like my armor. I put it on as a young guy. I felt good. I looked good. And, the confidence that it gave me being in a suit, I felt empowered by it. I felt like I could go out and land any deal or make anything happen in that suit. So I really want to give that to the next generation of people, is the suit, but also, and again, this comes back to me being completely honest. The reason the suit is, and custom suits, is because I didn't have to invest any money into inventory. I could invest in the fabric swatches, and then it was all made to order. So there was no overhead for me. I didn't have to start my brand by going to buy 1,000 t-shirts. And then if you don't sell those 1,000 t-shirts, you're out of money. You're out of luck. So to me, it was all about being strategic on how I start the business, lowest cost possible, biggest award.
Yeah. And that's what I got from it. I've been through your website. To me, what it screams is high value.
Exactly. And it helped me build a network as well, right? So whether, however I want to do business, I may have different angles of my business, whether it be the clothing business or consulting business, or at that point, the marketing business. It would allow me to get in rooms. People would, from there, once you have conversation, oh, what do you do? Right. It helps me build that network even further. So it kind of all fit into the business sense, and it allowed me to create better relationships in my business world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about how a suit is like armor. I was 23 when I got into business development, so I'm a little older today. I'm 35, but yeah, man, it was hard in the beginning. And I totally agree with you. I remember putting on, my dress shirt, my tie, my suit, and feeling like $1,000,000. And when you're young, I think it is really important. I think dressing nice is almost more important when you're younger, because you need that armor. You don't have the life experience to give you the armor yet. And you're absolutely right. A nice suit is like wearing a suit of armor.
I completely agree. And the nice thing with it is when you deal with Conxeppt, there's a lot of suit companies, and anyone makes a good suit, a good quality suit, especially like even when you're comparing suits with like Tom Ford, where you're paying $10,000 for a suit. At that point, you're paying for the name. When you're looking at a suit, you're looking at the quality of the fabric, and there's just a level of quality that you get to that there's not much further you can go up. Right. So I always use the best quality fabrics. I've created a business where I made sure that the fabric mills I get my fabrics from, are family operated, or they're small businesses, or they create the best product out there possible without the brand name behind it, so that people are getting a really good product, and then they get my design eye to it, right? I've been, again, around fashion my entire life. I've been watching runway shows. The way I design a suit is probably different than the suit you would get from Hudson's Bay or Simon's or things like that. I have, that's what you're paying for at that point, is our eye and how we fit you. We put it into to your shape.
Yeah. Did you learn all of the fitting side of it, when you were a kid, when you were working at West Ed?
I did, yeah. We sold suits at West Ed. So we sold some suits, and there would be, these were Versace, or I heard Bickenberg, which is a cool brand out of, I believe, Denmark or Sweden. But we would sell these high-end suits, and I would sit there and measure or make sure to pin them. So I would learn how to do that, how to shape it, right? Even when we sold jeans, we would hem them, right? So it's about getting the length in there, and, making sure that the thigh, depending on how the fit the person wants. So I was always used to measuring the body. And then, but of course, when you're selling a suit, it takes time. It takes years. And that's another thing. During the business, while I was growing it, I spent a lot of money fixing people's stuff that didn't come out perfect. Okay. But to me, that was important, because there is other companies that don't fix it. And for me, is I'd rather invest in my business for the long term and made sure that every single one of my clients are completely happy. Even if I had to remake the entire suit from scratch, I would do that in the early part of my business. I would still do that today, but there's a lot less mistakes now, right? So it does take some time to build and learn and invest. And if I didn't have that career, that salary where I was making money,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could afford to do that, when
Sure.
you're starting out. So I think that that's what's important, is having that base so that you can fully invest properly into the business. And really, it's all about the quality that you're putting out.
Yes, yes. And then obviously a lot of challenges came with starting this organization for you, which is, dealing with suppliers. Tell us about like some of the challenges that you faced in, dealing with international suppliers.
Yeah, suppliers is tough dealing. A lot of times is shipping costs. Since COVID, the shipping costs are astronomical. It's almost, I would say, about 60% more than it was pre-COVID. Right, you're dealing with that, which is huge. You're dealing with different parts of the world having holidays at different times. Like you're wondering how many times a year is going to change and affect my supply chain, right? So that's another thing. Also, from a cultural aspect, when you're doing international business, I've learned this from, I just took the TAP program, the Trade Accelerator program with Edmonton Global here in Alberta.
Okay.
So you learn a little bit more about international business. And there was, they made an example of a Mercedes car that they launched in Asia. And I believe it was called Nova. But Nova, in the language, the Asian country they launched it, it's translated to no go, right? So there's a lot of like different things that you have to learn when you're doing international business, and the cultural aspects that you need to really study before you launch a t-shirt that might say something, or that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of tricks to the trade that you have to learn. But customs is another one, right? Ensuring you're doing the right custom declarations on each item, right? There was one jacket I wanted to make that had fur on it, on the lapel. And I have in Portugal, they don't have too much fur. They didn't have enough at that point, so I was going to buy an old jacket from here at a vintage store, send it, because we only needed a little bit of fur.
I see.
And I go to ship it out, and they're like, luckily I have a good relationship with the guy at the mail shop at Pack Mail, because he was like, oh, you can't send this because it's endangered, or you're not, you need the right paperwork to send this off, or you can get fined $10,000.
Wow.
So just like little things like that you need to know the laws to. Like, who would have known that sending a vintage fur jacket could have cost me 10 grand?
No.
Right.
No, that's it. Unless you're like, you're not going to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And you were just in Asia. So tell me a little bit about some of the stuff you guys are doing down there right now.
Yeah, we had an incredible time in Asia. I brought my wife with me, so it was a half business trip, a little bit of a vacation. It was my first time in Asia. We went down to Thailand, and of course we make suits, right? So we make European suits. And who wears those who wear suits, what sports do they typically play? They play golf or they play tennis in the summertime,
Yeah.
right? So our vision for this summer of 2024 is to have a ready to wear line, and it's going to be a golf line. So Fair Play by Conxeppt for golf, and then Conxeppt Sports for the tennis line. So we're going to be launching that this year. We went out to Asia, met some suppliers and some manufacturers, some of the same manufacturers that make quality garments for Patagonia, brands that are worldly recognized. So it was great to be in Asia. It was nice to skip winter here in Edmonton, because you're from Edmonton as well, Kelly. So it was the day I left, it was plus 11 the whole time in December. The day we left, it was like minus 20. And then it was minus 40 for 2 weeks. So we missed all that. And then we came back and it was plus 11. So that was a nice thing to skip winter. But
Yeah.
we made some really nice relationship. I really enjoyed the culture there in Thailand. A lot of friends told me, be careful what you bring down there. Like, don't wear your jewelry, don't wear that. It was the safest country I've ever been in. At nighttime on some of these islands, beautiful art stores with statues, and they're all outside. There's no vandalism. There's no homeless people. Sometimes we go to these countries and we kind of bring our Western beliefs with us. And we're like, oh, well, they don't live in this big house like we do here, or they don't have this and that, but they look so much happier. The food that they eat is fresh food, fresh fruit. They spend time with their families. They're not always rushing to the next things. They walk a lot, which is super healthy for us as humans. And living in Edmonton, it's not a very walkable city, especially if you live in the suburbs, right? So we're never really walking. So just seeing that different lifestyle that they live and appreciating it, and it's a humbling experience, right? I'm a little bit off track, but I'll tell you a story. We went to a market, and if you're vegan, you probably want to pause this. We went to a market where animals are there, and you get to actually pick them while they're alive. And you pick the animal, and they'll cut the chicken. And the reason why I'm telling you the story is because I've never killed an animal, but I'm a meat eater.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit of a hypocrite. I've actually never seen an animal die. I'm a city kid. I grew up in the city. I'd never really been on a farm, never saw an animal get shot, never been hunting.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm a meat eater, and I always called myself a hypocrite because I love animals, and it really gives me a hard time to see an animal get hurt. However, if I'm eating the meat, I should probably see it. So I wanted to just live that experience.
Yeah.
So we went to the market, and you pick out the chicken, and they do their thing, and they unpluck them, and then you eat that chicken. But the humbling experience that you have, and how our parents used to like say grace and say thank you for your food, and it really brought that emotion to me. So like before I had that meal, I sat down and I thank the universe and thank the chicken to give their life for my food. So you felt a lot more connected to the food, which for us, it's like you just go to the grocery store and you kind of feel disconnected. You never see what actually is behind the door. So I want to experience that myself. Long story short is there's a lot of different cultural things that happen there that I was really humbled to experience and really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you completely. There's such a disconnect between us and our food these days. I can respect that. That makes a lot of sense. Even as a kid, I grew up kind of half and half. Like, I had family on farms, so we did all of that. We did the butchering, we did all sorts of things. So I was connected to that from a very young age. So I totally understand what you're saying. It's a completely different experience when you actually have to see where your food is coming from. And I think most people just want to put their head in the sand and pretend. But the reality is everything that you eat, you should be thankful for, because yes, most likely something had to die so that you could do so.
Absolutely.
Dave, this has been absolutely amazing. I do want to spend some more time on Conxeppt. I think that you offer a wide range of products, and I would just love to chat a little bit about what are all of the products that you guys sell at Conxeppt.
Absolutely. We make everything. So we've got, first of all, so Conxeppt, the clothing and culture part of Conxeppt, is completely custom clothing. So we make custom suits, custom shorts, custom short sleeve shirts, custom tuxedo shirts, handmade tuxedos, anything from formal wear we actually make. But we also make top coats and vests. So cashmere top coats, great for our winters here. Lots of tweeds. We make women's clothing in formal wear. We make women's casual clothing as well. We will be getting into custom denim as well here in Alberta, custom shoes, custom leather. So right now we make leather jackets, leather bags, things like that, completely custom, sustainable, made to order, zero waste, right? So we're really big on the environment and ensuring that we're not wasteful at all. And same with our ready-to-wear line. Once we do launch the ready-to-wear e-commerce side of the line, it will be limited pieces. We're not going to be ordering 1,000 pieces of anything because we don't want to have that waste. We don't want to be a fast fashion brand. We want to slow fashion back down. And I always say that fashion is full circle, right? So fashion started off being completely custom. And it went into Selfridges was the first one. And he said, well, it takes so long to get these custom, and some people need clothes today and they're not planning properly. So he actually invented the department store where you can come in and buy all of the things, which was so innovative at the time that you can get ready to wear today clothing. So that came, and like for the last 100 years, that's how we've been shopping the exact same way. But with that comes a lot of waste now. piles of clothing that are just, especially when it's plastic. At the end of the day, a lot of these synthetic fabrics are polyester and they're plastic, so it really is wasteful. For us, we use all natural fabrics, so all natural wools and linens. However, Conxeppt is also a consulting business, so I have a team of SEO experts, I have a team of branding experts, and we're a marketing consulting team, and we do business with a lot of different varieties. And part of that business, I have a contact, and they do pyrolysis, and it's a way to take that waste and generate heat or energy out of the waste. So we're actually working on right now a few different projects where we can help out these big fast fashion brands and actually get rid of their waste. So it's one of my big ethos is sustainability and ensuring that we're not wasteful and ensuring that, we're helping out the environment. So I've got projects on the consulting side of Conxeppt that are integrated into the clothing business of Conxeppt, really trying to make a better impact around the world.
Dave, I know that, people hear custom and sometimes it freaks them out a little bit. They hear custom and the dollar signs just pop up. But I don't think that's the case with what you're doing. Go ahead with that.
Yes, you're absolutely right. A lot of times people think, quite expensive when they hear custom. However, I worked many years on the back end building the relationships that needed to be built to keep the price low. So Conxeppt is the intersection between affordability and quality, right? So that was my main goal with Conxeppt is to provide quality for the best price possible. And the way I did that is building the relationships with the fabric mills. So when I go there and build these relationships, I'm the direct buyer from the mill. There's no middleman in between. A lot of these clothing stores might have 2 to 4 people making money on these. I go straight to the source. I get my fabric there, and then I have a relationship with the tailor shop as well. So I am actually doing all the hard work behind the scenes. A lot of these companies that are selling customs will have middlemen handling those relationships for them. So they're paying a few more steps so that it increases the price. So that was my whole goal with this, is to ensure that I have the price low. And my price range is for a 2-piece suit about $11.88. And we actually have group pricing. We do a lot of weddings. So we have, if you're buying 3 to 5 suits, we have conversations on the price as well. So we can always help out in that area.
Amazing. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's high quality materials for a high value price. I absolutely love it, Dave. This has been absolutely amazing. I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us today and telling your story. What an amazing story it is. What amazing marketing advice. We appreciated having you immensely. So thank you so much for coming, Dave.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate it. And continued success to you. 118 shows. That's not an easy task to do. So it like everybody else. Consistency wins the game. So great job. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. Until next time, this has been episode 118 of the Business Development Podcast. We have had founder and creative director of Conxeppt with us, Dave Pavelich. It was absolutely amazing. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.